There we go, recording started. So we're gonna get started today with a little bit of review about the floor plans, but then we're also gonna try to extend what we can do with floor plans. And we'll talk a little bit about line weights and layers and kind of general organization. Again, there is no check-ins this week, so there weren't any on Monday, there won't be any today. And the goal there is to give you the extra time to get your floor plans fully done and resolved and ready to roll for next week when we'll do the building elevations. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen right now. And bear with me for just a second here. And there we go. You guys should see a floor plan up. This is a floor plan that I've drawn in previous semesters. And so I'm just going to use this one because it's a little bit more resolved than the one I was working with last class, in that I have the windows already drawn. And I put a little bit of extra detail into some of these windows. Remember, the most basic window looks something like this. I've put 2 lines in for the double thickness of the glass. If you wanted to just do a single line, there's nothing wrong with that. And as of right now, everything that you've drawn is probably on the topography layer. And I think in this drawing, it's actually not on the topography layer. So let me switch it so that it matches what you're seeing. There we go. It's on the topography layer. And that's how you probably drew it. Now, first thing we want to talk about today is layers and layer order and kind of how you organize your drawing. And so layers are something that we've obviously used in Photoshop and InDesign, Illustrator, but in AutoCAD, they become very, very important, and they're a key factor in how you organize your work. And if you go to work for, say, a firm, that firm is going to have a specific layer structure and a specific naming scheme that they tend to follow and that you'll be required to learn and or follow. For our purposes today, we don't really have a set naming scheme that needs to be followed. You can name the layers anything you want. What I typically do is I tend to follow the most common practice of layer names. And so if we're going to follow a common practice, let me show you how to do it. So up here, we're in the home ribbon. At the top of the page, we have a big button that says layer properties. If I were to click on that layer properties, it will bring up this layer properties manager little floating window here. And this layer properties manager shows us what our current layers are. So right now I have a layer 0 and I have a layer called topography. Yours is going to match up the same as mine with the layer 0 and the topography. But we have some other information about these layers. So first off, we have an on and off switch. So it's a little light bulb that turns the layer on and off. If we turn the layer off, for example, the content that's on that layer will turn off. Next to that, we have a sun. And so this is something called freeze and thaw a layer. And this is actually a really strange holdback. I'm kind of surprised that they haven't gotten rid of this. This is a holdback to the really old days of AutoCAD. So think like in the 90s, in the 80s and 90s when AutoCAD was first around, it was really taxing on a computer to keep information stored in memory. So turning on and off a layer keeps the information on the layer in the computer's memory. It doesn't actually get rid of that information. And so they invented something called freeze and thaw. And when you freeze and thaw a layer, it actually takes the information of a layer out of the computer's memory, and then you put it back in when necessary. In our world today, computers are so powerful that it really doesn't make any difference whether you freeze and thaw or turn on and off a layer. It's just not, it's not relevant, but it's a holdover, so it still exists. So the freeze and thaw, for your purposes, does exactly the same thing as the on and off. So whether you use on and off or whether you use freeze and thaw doesn't really matter to me. I tend in lecture to use freeze and thaw because that's old school, and I learned AutoCAD in the 90s, so that's the way it is. Next to that, we have a lock button, and that padlock, when we lock it, will make it so that we can't select or trim or modify the layer that's been locked. So we'll go ahead and unlock it so we can keep working with it. Next to that, we have a little printer icon, and this controls whether or not a layer is a printing layer, whether it will plot with the drawing or not. If I change this to not, and we were to print this, everything that's on this layer wouldn't be printed. And this is actually really beneficial long-term, and we'll be creating some layers that are non-printing layers on purpose, and I'll show you that when we get there. Next thing we have is color. you see right now that the layer color is currently set to white. This white color is the one that turns black when we go to print. And so that's set to make it easier for us to draw and to see on the screen. It's set as white. You have the ability to change colors to any other color should you want to. Some firms assign line weight by colors, so they have specific, basically thicknesses of lines that would be assigned to specific colors. I don't encourage us to do that in this class because that varies by firm, and so it's not as consistent as just assigning the line weights manually. So we will get to that a little bit later on. The next thing that we have is something called a line type. These are like, do you want a dashed line or a center line or a specific line type? We would change it there. We also have what's called a line weight. This is how thick a line is and how thick it appears. There is also a value for transparency if you wanted it to be somewhat transparent. I've never found that this is useful in practice, but it does exist. And then the rest of these we'll get to a little bit later on, but for right now, we're gonna ignore everything else in the layer stack. So first thing we want to do is to create a new layer. And when we create a new layer, we'll use this button right here. It's like 3 pieces of paper with a yellow star next to it. And if I click on that, you'll see that it creates a new layer. By default, it's called layer 1, and it has the properties of the layer above it. So it copies the properties from the layer above it. So it gives you a place to start. So we want to separate our content out in a way that would be fairly traditional, and that is that we're going to keep the walls separate from the windows, separate from the doors, separate from the fixtures and content that's in the building. So my first layer, I'm going to rename it to be A-wall. And this is a pretty common practice where A denotes that this is an architectural input. So it's the architecture that's going on the layer A. If you were an engineer, you would use E. If you were utilities or doing something like that, it would be U. If you were doing, mechanical, it would be an M. So it's just a way of kind of organizing the layer. We're in architecture, so we're going to do A-wall as our first layer. Now, as we come over here, obviously we want the wall, everything to be on, but we want to change the thickness of the wall. And generally the thickness of the wall is the most thick in terms of a line weight. So I would come down here and I would say maybe 0.4 millimeters as our line weight would be appropriate. So I'll select 0.4 and I'll say, okay. And you'll see that my default line weight on that layer is now 0.4. That means anything that's on that layer will have a line weight of 0.4. So we'll come back and we'll create some more layers, but let's talk about moving an object to a different layer. So let's close the Layer Properties Manager altogether. And now if I were to select a wall, so I'm dragging a little box through my wall here and I'm selecting some pieces of the wall. Once I have that wall selected, I would come up to my layer properties here, click this little drop down. Right now it says topography. If I click that drop down and I choose a wall, it's going to change all of those to the wall layer. Now I'm not actually seeing the line weights because they're not turned on, they're not enabled. They would show up when I print, but they're not enabled. If I wanted to see those, I could come down to these 3 lines in the bottom right corner. And oops, it's behind my Zoom window, so hang on for just a second. There we go. And when I do that, I could choose line weight, and that just turns on the button, which is right here. And then I could actually click on the button and you'd see those lines get thicker. AutoCAD does not do a particularly good job of displaying line weights. Sometimes they look really fat, like right here, they look really thick. That's a little bit unrealistic long-term, but they're there and you can tell that they were on a layer. I'm going to turn them back off for right now. The other thing, if you're working with a layer and you're struggling to figure out what's on a particular layer, is that you can actually go into your layers. So I'll open up my layer properties again, and we can temporarily change the A wall layer to have a different color. So let's change A wall to red. And there it is. And now with the A wall layer is red, we can kind of see what we've selected and what we haven't selected. So I'm going to work my way through the rest of my drawing here. I have some fancier windows drawn in here. It's kind of like a glass curtain wall. I need to select these interior divisions. So bear with me. There's that. Those are selected. Let's come over here and let's select the rest of these walls. I missed that one. And I apologize, my my connection to the remote desktop is a little bit slow today. It's a little, I have to be patient while I'm working with it. But get the rest of these. Come in here and get these little divisions. So when we're looking at the walls layer, we want the basically the lines that represent the sides of the windows are going to be selected in addition to the outsides of the walls. And those are all going to show up. Let's see, we've got that over here. And remember, all I need to do to change this is to go up to my layers, click this little drop down and change to a wall, and we'll see all of those turn red. A little bit more, so bear with me as I get through the last of this. It's always one of those fine balances where I want to make sure that I'm including what I'm doing so that you guys can see me do it, but I also hate wasting your time and having you watch me click and click and click. So I apologize for that time delay, but it is what it is. So let's see here. Let's do this. We're almost there. Oh, looks like there's an error in my drawing. We'll have to fix that a little bit later. And we're almost there. And let's go ahead and change those all to the wall layer. And one more quick selection here. And those would all be on the wall layer as well. Okay, so now I've officially gotten everything, I think, on the walls layer like it should be, except for that one little line. One of the things you'll find in doing this is sometimes you miss a few lines and you can always come back and get it. That's part of why changing the color temporarily is useful, because you can quickly kind of see, oh, this was included, this wasn't included, I made a mistake there, etc. So let's go ahead and get this one. And we'll change that one as well to the wall layer. Okay, so now I have the walls pretty much selected. And so once they're on the walls layer, it makes life much easier because we can actually turn off. Remember, I have the freeze and thaw button. I can turn off all the walls and then look at what's left. And so that would then make selecting the windows or the doors that much easier. So let's go back into my layer properties again. And we'll click on the little plus sign here to create a new layer. This is going to be A-door. And there it is. And for our doors, this is something that can be helpful if we pull up the line weight guide that's on the back of your, or that's actually attached to your, and I apologize, I don't have, I'm not already logged in here. Hold on a second. Okay. So I included this as a guide for you so that you can reference what appropriate line weights would be. So let's come down here into today's exercise. It's exercise 119. And if we scroll down, this little sheet will give you an idea of what the various line weights should be. So if we look over here at a wall, I have 0.4 millimeters in black. So our window glass is 0.00. Our door, now in an ideal world, you have different door thickness and door swing. I'm going to do everything at 0.18. So let's come back here, and my line weight for the A door layer is going to be 0.18. There it is. We'll go ahead and say okay. Now all I have to do is select the doors and move those on the layer. So remember, I turned off the windows So that makes selecting the doors that much easier. So let's select these doors. All right, so those are all the doors. We can change those just the same way. We'll click that drop down and we'll change to a door. And those are now on the door layer. I can turn off the door layer. So we'll click the freeze icon. Now my doors have turned off. Next thing we need is the A window. So I'll click this little plus sign and we'll say A dash window. And under line weights, I have the window line weight at 0.00. And again, you can reference this that I showed up here. I have my window glass at 0.00, which is essentially what's going on the window layer. And so now I just have to go in, we'll close this and select all of those windows. Let's select those windows there. Select these windows here. Select these windows here. It looks like I missed a few lines. It should only be the glass that's on the windows layer. So let's put all of those. There we go, on the windows layer. All right, they're on the window layer. Oops, I missed these. So let's select all of these and put them on the window layer. A window, perfect. So now I have all of those, except for those windows on the windows layer. So it takes a little bit of time to organize this, but you can see how once I start to have this set up, it makes it much, much easier to work with. So now as I'm turning these off, I can kind of see what I've missed. Looks like I missed a little section of wall right here that should go on the wall layer. So we'll select that and put it on the wall layer. All right, and oops, this is on the window layer. And that's just warning me that my object is going to a layer that's turned off. So we're adding that to the wall layer there. Okay, so now that we have those relatively aligned, these extra lines are representative of other things in my floor plan. Let's go ahead and turn them back on. We'll turn back on the doors, we'll turn back on the walls, we'll turn back on the windows. Now we can kind of see the building as a whole again. So as we move forward, we may need other layers to start to identify what's going into our building. So for example, right, we have a kitchen that's been kind of laid out here. And so in this kitchen, I may want to put those lines on a layer. So if those lines were going on a layer, I tend to do a layer called A-fixtures for things that are built in. So these are like kitchen cabinets and that sort of thing. And we'll leave we'll leave them set. Let's take a look at my little handout here and confirm. I've got my kitchen cabinets down here. 0.18 is probably a uniform for that. So we'll do 0.18 for the fixtures layer. Let's close that. And now we'll take all of the fixtures. And we will move them onto that fixtures layer. Perfect. So we've got that on the fixtures layer. So at this point, if I were to turn my walls layer back to white, now it is important when I do that, we don't want to pick the white here. So see that index color 255 at the bottom? That one will actually stay to a very, very light gray on a print. We instead want to pick this one, index color 7. That's the magic color that will turn black when we go to print it. And some of you will have, if you select the wrong one, you'll have trouble when you're printing because it won't show up. But that's okay, that's what I'm here for, so we can fix it. Okay, so now all of those are back on. I could turn on my line weights temporarily. I can click the little line weights button here and we can see that yes, some line weights have been assigned. Anything below 0.3 are really not gonna show up as line weights in AutoCAD. They just don't preview well. It looks like there's a few little pieces that I missed. Like that piece right there should be a wall. And there's always going to be some of those little details that need to be addressed as we go forward. So the next part of this is that you may want to include some furniture to represent what's happening in these rooms. So for example, I have a kitchen here, I have maybe a bathroom here, and I have a couple bedrooms and a little bit of outdoor space. And as I look at this, I may want to identify some furniture. Now, of course, we could draw furniture. I could draw a couch or whatever. We could also go to a manufacturer's website and see if they have an AutoCAD drawing to download. But what we're really looking for is something called a block. And lucky for us, AutoCAD is very universal, and that means that there are lots of different blocks that people have already drawn that we can use. The website I'm going to recommend today is something called First in Architecture, and I'm not asking you to buy anything. They do sell some blocks as a way of supporting themselves, but there are plenty of free ones. I'm only asking you to use the free ones. And so, excuse me, if we go to firstinarchitecture.co.uk, here, let's do it fresh here. firstinarchitecture.co.uk. It'll take us to this website, and they have some special stuff that they're working on, detail libraries, etc. We're going to go into CAD blocks, and you can see that they have CAD blocks for a bathroom. They have CAD blocks that are furniture. They have CAD blocks that are trees, vehicles, you name it. We're going to go into furniture right here. And you can see that some of these are listed for free island blocks, free wardrobe blocks. And if we keep scrolling down here, if they're not listed as free, you're not going to be able to use them. So here's free bed and mattress blocks. So we're to click on that. There it is. We kind of get a preview of what we're seeing here, and then there's a button to download now. So we'll click on download now. And this is downloaded as a zip file. So let's go ahead and show that in a folder. There it is. And let's right click and say extract all. Now I encourage you to put these on your OneDrive in a resources folder. So I'll click on browse. I'm going to go to OneDrive. I already have a resources folder here. I have a folder for AutoCAD, and I have a folder for blocks. So these are all blocks that I've worked with before. So this is bedrooms. So let's go and create a new folder, and we'll call it beds. And I'm going to extract everything into that folder. And we'll go ahead and click and extract. And there it is as an AutoCAD file. Now we can open this file and see what's here. So if I were to double click it, we'll open it and we'll see what's here. There's a bunch of beds and bed sizes. And we could just take one of these beds and we could copy it. So I could select it, and I'm going to do, instead of the traditional copy command, I'm going to do copy clip. And what that's doing is it's copying to the clipboard. And then I could jump over into my floor plan and I could type in paste clip. Oops, helps if I can type correctly. Paste clip. And then it would show up right here, like that. Obviously, this size is way off. And that's one of the things that you'll run into, is that sometime in using these blocks, the sizes are not quite right. So we'll get to saying that in a second. Let me go ahead and delete that. The other thing that we can do is we can use this insert menu over here. And if we use the insert menu, we can actually insert the block directly from its AutoCAD library. So we can say, let's go to blocks from libraries, and then we can choose, sorry, I have to get back to my OneDrive, and we can go to my folder, oh, sorry, it's in resources. And let me go to AutoCAD, let me go to blocks, and go to beds, and I could pick this, let's say open. And it's going to bring in, sorry, this is behind my Zoom window here. It's going to bring in all of these beds that I could use. So I could, for example, use the Queen plan here, right? I can right click and I can say insert, and there it is. Now, when I did it this way, my scaling worked. So that's an appropriate scaling. So it might be a little bit better to do it this way. So let me go ahead and stick it in this room. That's a queen bed. We could rotate this. So it works just like any object. I can type rotate. Or under the home ribbon, I could choose rotate right there. And we're going to rotate this. Let's rotate it this way. If I want it to jump to 90 degrees, I can turn on this little ortho line like that. And then we can move this. I'm going to move it from the center of the bed, I hope. Oh, I don't have midpoint turned on. So let me go down to my object snaps. I'm going to check the box for midpoint. And now I can snap to the middle of this bed and put that on the middle of this wall, I hope. Not quite, but probably close enough. Move it down just a little bit more. My mouse jumped on me. Let's move it over. All right, and there's my queen bed. Then I could come back over here and I could say, you know what? I want to do a different size bed. Let's do a double. I can right click on it and I can say insert. And there's that bed. And maybe that one goes in this room. And then we'll rotate that one again. So I'll type rotate. And one of the great things about bringing furniture in like this is you see very quickly how big your room is and whether it really accommodates what you think it will. So let's go right there to right there. And there's that bed in the room. So this room probably could accommodate a king without a problem, but this room really, is kind of stuck at a double or a queen. So let's look at the rest of the things that we might want to download. Let me click on this. Or back to the First in Architecture library. You can, of course, do a Google search for any number of AutoCAD blocks. But here we have free CAD blocks for chairs. Here's sofas and couches. Let's try that one. So I'll click on that. We'll come down here a little bit further. We see all the previews there. And we want to download, in this case, we want to download the imperial, not the metric, because the imperial are going to be the ones that are in feet and inches. So we'll click on download imperial. And there they are. Go ahead and show them in their folder. I'll right click to extract. I'll say extract all. And again, I want to make sure that they go on to my OneDrive in my resources folder. And I keep them in the resources folder because typically we're going to reuse these over and over again. So let's see here. Let's do, how do I not have a folder for couches? All right, and then I'll go ahead and click on the select folder and then choose extract. And there they are. So we can come back here. And once again, I'll go to the insert tab. I'll click this little down arrow. And I'm going to go to blocks from libraries. And that just opens this. And I'm going to have to open a new library. So I'm going to click that little, it looks like some books on a shelf. And we're going to go back out of that and we'll go to my couches. And then we'll choose open there. And it's loading, so give it a second. And there they all are. So just in the same way here, I can come down and I could choose any one of these sofas. So let's say I like this sofa. I could right click and say insert. And there it is. And I could put that sofa into my room right there. We can come down here. Maybe I don't like that. I would rather have a configuration of sofas. Let's try that. Right click and insert. Those are much, much bigger. So I might not do those. But this is again the options where we can play around with. Let me right click and say insert that one. Yeah, that one might be good. Maybe I'd rather have this one there. And then we can get rid of this. So you can play around with these options and kind of sort it out. And maybe I want it to be, let's rotate it. And I'm going to type in 180 so that it flips the other direction. I could mirror it as well. And let's move this. And let's kind of assume that we would want that to be looking out the view. So I'm just orienting it slightly differently. So the idea behind these blocks is that we don't have to spend the time drawing it. We can use them and just drop them into our building. That's one of the big benefits of using a block. So I would encourage you to do it that way. Get some furniture in your building. Now we do have to make sure that that furniture is on the appropriate layer. So let's go back to our layer properties. Let's click the little new layer. And I usually do A-Fern for furniture. I'm going to set my default line weight at 0.00 for that one. We'll close it, and I'm going to take each one of these blocks that are furniture, and I will put those on the A-Fern layer, like that. So there are blocks that have kitchen appliances in them. There's blocks for pretty much anything that you could be after. There's bathroom, toilets, etc. So you don't have to sit. I mean, once we've done them once, you can see that they're available over and over again, and it's really the same process. So I could go here to the bathroom. There's free bathroom blocks, right? So I could download those, and now I have bathroom blocks. There are some blocks that have some unique properties to them. They might have a little selection where you can change what one of them looks like. So depending on where you find them, you may end up kind of experiencing that. If, for example, I were to load one of mine in here, this is one that I actually created myself. Right? It has a bed in it. I can insert this bed like that. So there's a bed, little fancier because it's got all the pillows and stuff on it. But this has the option right here to change the bed size. So I have different types of beds. I can go all the way up to a king bed, and it's going to change between one and another. So it's a special type of block that has, basically options for how you wanted to create something. So I like to point that out because some blocks have that little down triangle, and you could use that if you wanted to. If anybody's interested in this block, I'm happy to give it to you going forward, but that's how it works. Okay, so after that, we've got our layers, we've got our line weights, we've inserted our blocks, and again, there would be more blocks in this. The next thing that may be beneficial is to actually add some color to these walls to make them stand out a little bit more. And we can do that by using the hatch tool. And in previous lectures, I've used the hatch tool to do flooring. I've found that, especially in these later versions of AutoCAD, a lot of times it crashes and it doesn't do well around the block. So I'm going to stop showing that as an example. Instead, we're just going to use a hatch for inside the wall. And I'll do that by using the hatch command. And it's available right here. You could also type in hatch. If I click on it, it has a whole bunch of patterns. And so these may be beneficial when we go to do the elevations, for example. But the one we're going to use today is just solid. So I'll click on solid. And then when we look at the hatch, it says pick an internal point. So all I need to do is click inside of my walls, and you'll see that it will fill in my wall. Actually, it kind of previews it when I move over it with a fill color. So I'll go through, oops, and I'll look for all of my walls. You may end up needing to zoom in a little bit here so you can see. I'll fill that in. Like that. If you make a mistake, you can press Control Z. Hold on, almost done. There. And there. There. A few more to go. Sometimes when you hover over, you don't actually, it won't fill in, it won't preview. That's because part of the fill is going off of your view window. And so it won't let you fill it in. Almost done. All right, so I believe I got it all. When I'm done, I'll go ahead and press enter, and it's now filled in all of my walls. Now, I've found that it's actually nice, instead of having this as its, really dark black fill in, sometimes it's nice to change that color a little bit. So let's go ahead and do our own, put it on its own layer. So let's go here, we'll go to our layer properties. I'm going to create a new layer, and I call this A-wall fill. You could put a little hyphen if that helps. I'll set my line weight at 0.00. By the way, 0.00 isn't actually nothing. It's just meaning it's the thinnest line AutoCAD can produce. Okay, so let's take my hatch. Oh, sorry, I have to close my layer properties here. We'll go back to my home ribbon and we'll change that into the A-wall fill. And then let's take the wall fill layer right here, and instead of having it as white, which will end up printing as black, let's use one of the grays. So I like 251 for this. So I'll come down here to the grays, I'll pick 251 gray, and I'll say okay. And that then fills in the walls, but they're kind of a dark gray rather than a black, which I think sometimes looks a little bit better. All right, so I have my walls filled, that's good. Looks like I didn't fill those sections, so I may need to come back. Also, this looks like it needs to be on the wall layer, as does that little piece right there. I can come back and fill those in a little bit later. Go to a wall, there we go. So the other thing, that sometimes you want to do something that represents something that's above in plan. So remember, a plan is cut at about 4 feet above the floor. And we cut a plan at 4 feet above the floor because that includes the lower kitchen counters, for example. It includes most of the furniture. It's above where most of the furniture would be, but it's also below where anything, it goes through most of the windows, it goes to the doors, but it's not so high that we're missing things like windows or doors or what have you. So we want to make sure that we're identifying things that are above where we cut that floor plan. So things that are above would be things like the upper cabinets. These guys right here, those would be upper cabinets. And they're typically displayed using a dashed line. And so if we wanted to convert those to a dashed line, we can select them and then come over here into the properties. We don't have to do it for a whole layer. We're just doing it for the individual lines. We can come over here to our layer properties. And right now we just have a by layer, by block, or continuous. So we need to load another one. So let's go to other. And then we can choose load. And you can see that AutoCAD has a ton of different line weights that are included in here. The one that I like to use is this one. It's called Hidden 2 or 0.5x. It's a little bit smaller of a dash. And so we'll go ahead and load that one in. And I'll say okay. And then all we have to do is select our lines now that those are loaded. Select those. And then we'll come over here and change to Hidden 2. Now, you guys are probably saying, well, wait a minute, they didn't change at all. And that's true, they didn't change. They don't change in this model space where we're going to, where we're seeing them. They will, however, change when we go to print them. So once the drawing is scaled, you'll start to see those show up. So it's kind of a weird one because you can't see it yet. When we get to paper space and model space, then we'll be able to do it. I have a couple overhangs that are showing up here as well. So I want to take those overhangs and make sure that they're dashed lines. So I'll select those and I'll go ahead and do Hidden 2. This is equivalent to, oops, sorry about that. This is equivalent to this dashed line that goes around the outside of my building. All right, that's the roof line. So I'm not going all the way around. You'll see when I do this roof that it's a little bit different, but I've gone ahead and I've changed those line types. Again, if you don't see these yet, we can come back and do these again when we get a little bit further along. Once we do the building elevations, then we'll ultimately be doing our layouts, in which case we can come back and make these kinds of corrections. So my goal for you today is to have a floor plan that has furniture in it being brought in by blocks, and also to have line weights appropriately installed, maybe hatch, using a solid hatch, the the walls themselves so you can kind of see the thickness. Oh, the one other thing I should say is that these topo lines currently go through the building. And so we might want to trim those out. I have that one topo line. You may have multiple topo lines. I can use the trim command, which we've done before. I'll click on trim. And I can come in here and I can trim that topo line. And all I'm doing is I'm trimming the end. So I come here and I trim that end right there. And now that I have those two trimmed, I'll hit enter. I can then select the middle section of the line and actually press the delete key or type erase if you're on a Mac, and that can go away. So we want to make sure that topo line doesn't cross through our building anymore. Okay, so that's now done. Let's go ahead and save my work. I'll click the little save icon here. I'll make sure it finishes its save. And then let's talk about, sorry for the background noise. Hold on one second. All right, there we go. The background noise hopefully abated a little bit. Okay, so now the last thing to do would be to print this. So I want a JPEG as what you're turning in as part of this exercise. You can, of course, print the JPEG, which is what I'm going to show you how to do, or you could screen capture this. If you'd rather just take a screen capture, there's nothing wrong with that, and turn that in for your work. But let's go ahead and show you the print process again. I'm going to click the little printer icon, which in AutoCAD is called plot. Then I'm going to, under the printer plotter name, I'm going to choose this down here at the bottom, publish to web JPEG. I'll use my default paper size, that's good. Now, one thing that we haven't done that we didn't do last time is under this plot style table, we want to choose the first option, the AutoCAD.ctb. So we'll change that. Now we can go ahead and select, we can do the display, or I could pick a window. Let's pick a window so I can pick around my building here. I like that. Perfect. And then we'll go ahead and say, okay. It'll ask us where we want to save it. I'm going to put it in my OneDrive in today's folder, wrong class. And let's see, we're in 119. And there it is. I'll go ahead and click on save. Perfect. And then when I went to turn it in, that's what I'd be looking for. So let's go ahead and look at it here, just so you can see it. Oh, of course, it's going to open Photoshop. Hang on a second. Oh, come on, Photoshop. And there it is. So we can see that it does in fact have our line weights installed. Everything looks pretty good, and this is feeling like a pretty good floor plan for right now. I don't remember whether I specifically taught you. Yeah, I did teach you about the doors, so we're good. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to let you guys go unless anybody has any questions. Let me stop my share and we'll wrap up here. The key here is to get as far as you can on the floor plan and be ready for next class. I will stick around for the next, 30, 40 minutes in case anybody has any questions. Remember, we don't have the check-ins today. So spend your time getting your floor plan done. But if anybody has any questions, I'll be here. Let me know, and we'll go from there. Are there any questions before I let everybody go?
Yeah, I do actually. So
Sure.
I was going to incorporate like sliding glass doors, and
Sure.
I took a engineering class last semester, and they kind of it's kind of like the window, but it was like 2 lines and then like 2 dash marks. Is it going to be the
Yes.
same as that? Okay, cool.
Yes, that's exactly how you would do it. You may
Okay.
also find that you can find a block of a sliding glass door, so you don't have to draw it. But there's nothing wrong with just drawing it. Basically, it's 2 overlapping lines. It's very, very
Yeah.
close. Let me share my screen again. Hold on. Let's control plus, let's see. Oh, hold on. Wrong, sorry. That's what happens when you're Windows to Mac. Sometimes it messes with you here. Control plus, there we go. So well, you can't see them well enough. Let me get back into AutoCAD. These were actually meant to be sliders.
Yeah, that's kind of what we did too.
Exactly. So, mine might be slightly different. Style changes a little bit, but the idea is that they overlap one another and that they have glass in the middle. These ones over here were like closet doors, so sliding bypass doors. They don't have the glass in the middle.
Yeah. Okay,
so,
perfect.
Yeah. So if you're doing a slider, that's exactly how you would create it.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
So I should point out, when I get fancy, I tend to draw these little overlapping thresholds like this, just to indicate that there's a threshold. It's not at all required. You'll see on the drawing that I handed you here. Let's see, will it? Of course, it won't make it big right now, but I have those little overlapping pieces on some of the windows and whatever. That's a style thing, not at all required. So just because I show it doesn't mean you have to do it.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
All right, that was a great question. Do I have any more questions? No? All right, perfect. Well, I'll let you guys go. If you want individual help on anything, just stick around and we'll get to you.